Let's head back. Let's head back to Saturday. Carolina and Boston College in the Smith Center.
Anyone watching that got a real treat there when Jen said, let's head back to Saturday, and we both got up as though we were going to walk back in time to Saturday.
To the DeLorean.
Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Well, where these two teams were going, they didn't need defense in this game. 102-96, the final score. Carolina wins in overtime. The Tar Heels shoot 55.5%. They go 26 of 33 at the free throw line. They score 58 points in the paint. Free throws don't count for that.
They do not.
So, I mean, you're up to 84 points between paint and free throws. That's a lot. The Heels only turned it over 8 times. And it took a miraculous finish at the end of regulation for them to win this game. That should show you or tell you about what happened when Boston College had the ball. The Eagles, statistically one of the worst offensive teams in the ACC, scored by far their season high and the most points this year against Carolina, 96. They had the highest field goal percentage against the Tar Heels this year, 54.5%. BC made more threes and shot better from three than they had in any game this season. It was the highest three-point percentage against the Tar Heels this year. They went 14 of 24. 14 of 24. 58% from three. And that was after going 1 of 3 in overtime. So they were 13 of 21 in regulation, nearly 67% from three. And the Tar Heels won the game. Adam, one of the wilder games of the year, in that if you'd have asked me 10 times to describe different ways I thought this game would go, this was not on it. But the Tar Heels could not get any stops, and BC could not get any stops. Both teams did whatever they wanted offensively. BC was incredibly hot from three. I think Carolina allowed them to get hot by giving them good looks. I said this on the Rapid Reactions edition of the pod on Saturday. I do think some of the later in the game threes were much more difficult by Boston College, but they, at that point, were already seeing a big rim and were making a whole bunch of them. Donald Hand Jr. hit 5 threes after halftime. And I'm not sure, I don't think any one of them hit a piece of the rim. They were all right in the heart of the net. And several of them were with a guy right in his face. So Hubert Davis was very disappointed with the defensive effort. Carolina had actually been playing pretty good defense in conference play. Their numbers were at or near the top of the ACC standings in conference action as far as their defensive numbers. But they just got put in an absolute grinder. They had no answer because BC had a couple of big guys, and if Carolina tried to double them, then somebody was making a three. And if they didn't, then the big guy was scoring one-on-one. It reminded, Adam and I talked about this, it reminded you a little bit of how State was playing at the end of last year, where basically every play was give the ball to DJ Burns. If you double him, he'll make a nice pass and somebody will hit a three, probably DJ Horn. And if you don't double him, then he's just going to big body his way to a basket. So all of that said, Adam, Then there's the fact that it was truly it's remarkable Carolina didn't lose this game. The Tar Heels were down 4 with under 20 seconds to go. They had turned the ball over, down 2. Really bad turnover. BC milks the clock, hits a shot, very similar, not in the way the play played out, but a very similar shot to the end of the Stanford game, kind of a mid-range fall away on the baseline that went in. Then, to Carolina's credit, Seth Trimble busted down the floor, drew a foul, hit 2 big free throws, something Carolina did well for the most part in this game. And then Boston College could not get the ball in. Couldn't get it in multiple times. The Tar Heels thought they had forced a turnover. At one point when Drake Powell punched the inbounds pass back and it hit the BC guy who had thrown it in, but it hit the baseline first. Then they get a 5-second violation. Then Carolina scores to tie it. Then BC inexplicably comes up the floor, burns like 8 seconds, and then takes a timeout to just try and get it in again, which they couldn't do. Twice they tried to get it in bounds and couldn't do it. Drake Powell again knocked it back at them one time, and then the next time they lost it out of bounds. And Carolina almost hit a near half-court shot to win it in regulation. They end up winning in overtime. So, Adam, credit to Carolina for winning the game because that's what you had to do. Credit to the Tar Heels for making some crucial things happen in the final seconds and played well in overtime. They didn't miss a shot in overtime. But as Hubert Davis said with us afterwards on the radio, this is not, I mean, this was a BC team that was 9-10, had lost 5 straight, had lost 9 of 12, and it is yet another game that came right down to the end. The 11th game out of 18 that have been decided by 6 points or fewer. It seemingly, regardless of opponent, the game is going to come down to the final minutes, and this one did as well.
So many different ways to look at this one. I mean, you look at Boston College's offensive numbers, and you think, how did Carolina win this game? The Tar Heels in ACC play, opponents were converting 9 layups per game. Boston College made 20 layups or dunks in addition to the threes.
14 threes.
At one point, during one stretch of the game, they were 12 of 16 from 3. 75% while making 20 layups, and Carolina won. I mean, these are numbers that you beat someone like 108-70. But somehow they didn't because Carolina was playing very well offensively. So let's just don't think about the Tar Heel defense for just 1 second. The Tar Heel offense had to play extraordinarily well. The Carolina coaches had the points per possession at this game at 1.38 and 1.39. That is rocket ship high. Like there was a game a couple games ago, I think it might have been Wake, the Tar Heels were at like 0.7, which you would believe if you saw the game. So both these offenses just playing extraordinarily well. Now, you would hope and expect that the Carolina defense would be able to limit the Boston College offense a little more than what they did. Those 20 layups are a little concerning. But Boston College did a great job getting those shots. The only time Boston College didn't do a great job was the inexplicable decision when the one thing they couldn't do was throw the ball in to call timeout so that they had to throw the ball in.
Yeah, it didn't make much sense.
That was an absolute head-scratcher. Love Jalen Washington's description of Drake Powell on the Rapid Reactions pod, in which he said Drake Powell is an alien. And Boston College treated him like he was one because they wanted to be nowhere near him. Carolina got a great look to almost win the game.
Yeah, great play. And similar to the play at the end of the Georgia Tech game last year where R.J. Davis got tackled, but Ted Valentine had decided that he was mad at the Tar Heels and wasn't going to call foul. They threw it into Jalen Washington, back to the basket in the front court at about the three-point line. R.J. Davis had then come from the backcourt, was sprinting up. As it was unfolding, I was thinking, ooh, this might just take a little too long for it to work. But R.J. Davis got the shot off, and it was just a hair to the right. I mean, if it had been 10 inches to the left, it would have hit more of the center square and I think gone in. It hit kind of the right side of the square on the backboard and the right side of the rim. But a really, considering time and where you're inbounding and on the sideline in front of Boston College's bench and Carolina's backcourt, as good a shot, I think, as you could hope to have.
So that was a positive?
Yeah. Well, it's really hard to know. Like, you and I have both seen plenty of games when Carolina is an outstanding team and somebody who's not very good plays them really tight. There was I think maybe the 2012 season when Carolina was really good and they had beaten Boston College in Chestnut Hill by like 35. And then they played them again in the Smith Center and the final score was 48-46. So there's always that. It's ACC basketball, regardless of where the league is. You're playing teams that know you. You're playing teams that have some amount of talent. You're going through the grind of the league. That does happen. But, Adam, I think it's when you add this game to the pile of games we've already seen from the Tar Heels is what makes this a little more frustrating, right? And having said all of that, they won the game. And so there's definitely the negative side of it of you go, how was this game against this team close? But then on the other side of it, you think I can't imagine BC can play any better than it did. I don't know who they play next, but they'll probably score about 40 points and go 1 of 17 from 3 or something. So I can't imagine them playing any better. And you still found a way to win. But what was interesting to me was when I was talking to Coach Davis afterwards for the radio, and you were sitting in there, and I said, can this be a cat? Like, this was a unlikely win the way that it played out. You know, can this be a catalyst, kind of a rallying point? You're going to the final back half of league play. And he straight up said, I don't know. I don't know. He was less, I don't want to speak for him. It seemed to me like he was more concerned about the play that got Carolina in the close game than being happy that the Tar Heels executed and won the close game.
And that's what he said. He said it wasn't sustainable.
Right.
That playing that way that got the Tar Heels to that point was not sustainable. The one thing that Carolina had consistently been doing in ACC play was playing pretty good defense. So maybe this is just a one afternoon outlier. It was a warmer Saturday, and the Heels were thinking about going out and getting some ice cream after. Maybe there was a Belle Biv DeVoe concert.
Yeah, could be anything.
So I'm inclined, I think, to chalk it up to this was a really wacky game that we'll look back in March and go, I don't understand how that happened on either side, really. But the game plan can't be let's try to go get in a shootout with Clemson and Duke. I don't think that's going to work.
Right.
So you do need to identify some areas for improvement, which I know the Tar Heels already worked on it. But you're going to have to be better defensively than you were against Boston College.
Adam, there was the one moment in overtime where Jalen Washington went down. From the look on his face as he was leaving the court, you could tell that he felt like it was serious. Fortunately, the last time that I spoke to Jalen Washington was just after the game, and he had been looked at kind of briefly by Doug Halverson, the team trainer, Dr. Tom Brickner, team doctor, and everybody seemed to think he was okay, which was great news. Will he miss time? Don't know, but it doesn't appear to be a long-term injury or a very severe injury, which at the moment it did. So good news there, even though if Jalen Washington misses any games, that's bad news, but great news that it's not long-term.
And by the time you hear this, Hubert Davis will have addressed this multiple times. So we recommend you check with him, most notably on the radio show, which will also be in your podcast feeds. When we went back there, we were very somber, thinking, oh, this is not good, because we saw Dr. Brickner go back there, which usually is not a great sign. Seth Trimble's mom went back there because Jay Wash's parents weren't there. That's usually not a good sign. And then, like 3 minutes...
classy move by...
Oh, yeah. What would you expect?
Yeah.
Then 3 minutes later, as we're kind of trying to decide who we're going to talk to on the radio, they're like, what about Jalen Washington? I'm like, well, yeah, I thought they were amputating his leg. Is he available? And here comes Jay Wash. He's like, oh, yeah, I'm fine. I'll be good. So that was encouraging. Just with his history of leg injuries, it was a concerning moment. But if you can get out of that with him missing very few, if any, action, then that's a positive. Because he did have 18 points. Now, he struggled defensively. But all the Tar Heels did.
Both of those statements are accurate. Chad Venning, the main big guy for BC, is big. And he was using that size to his advantage, although he had just one rebound. So Carolina did a good job in that regard.
Which is so DJ Burns-ish.
Yeah.
Like, I've got to start running so I can't be down here near the rim getting rebounds.
But, man, I mean, 7 of 12 from the floor for 17 points. And a lot of those came in the final 10 minutes of the second half and then in overtime. He was a challenge for Jalen Washington or anybody to guard. So, I mean, Adam, here's the thing. Carolina could not lose this game. 13-8 overall, not great. 6-3 in ACC play, okay, but you got some tough games upcoming, and that leads us to this stretch, which we've been talking about for weeks. At Pitt, at Duke, Pitt at home, at Clemson, and then at Syracuse. So 4 of the next 5 on the road. By the time the Heels play their second home game in the month of February, it's going to be late February. I think it's like February 19th against State. And I hesitate to say the season will be written at that point, Adam, but I think you're going to have a much clearer picture of where the Tar Heels are and their postseason opportunities and what they're going to need to do at that point. These are just 5 enormous games. Again, 4 of them on the road for Carolina upcoming.